Hello to you, fellow being. Infinite Spiral here, and we are back again in Kerbal Space Program. So, first of all, I would like to apologize for the sort of extreme delay in getting this episode out. Wish I had a valid excuse, but the simple fact is I kinda just bit off more than I could chew with this mission. I gave myself a bit more than I'm capable of handling. So, no excuses, that's just how it is. I've tried over and over again to do this the way I had originally planned, and it's just not gonna happen. So instead, we're gonna be, we'll get to that in a second, but I just need to get back in real quick. There we go. Okay. So, to start off with, let me get to the map screen. Like so. So, all 7 ships have landed and successfully taken their science and put up flags. The flags are marked to give honor and recognition to the various commenters on my videos, viewers like you. So we've got the pockmark of DH here in honor of DH Gaming. Let's see, this is Mishka's Sinkhole in honor of Mishka. I forgot the numbers. There are numbers involved in Mishka's name. Thanks for sticking around, giving good advice here and there. This is Emo's Depression. I couldn't resist with that name. That's in honor of Emo Zardos, probably mispronouncing, I don't know. Drost Hollow, in honor of Michiel Drost, again, probably massively butchering that pronunciation. Omar's Accident, yes. So these two right here. I've got Farmer's Intention, that's in honor of Marcus Farmer. Thanks for sticking with me, buddy. And this one is Omar's Accident. The reason for those two names is I failed to use my map of the biomes effectively when I landed these crafts. You know, I had intended for this one to get a canyon biome. I was thinking that this was a canyon biome, but it's not. That whole area is Twin Craters biome. That's another thing. In the comments on the previous video, somebody mentioned that in the Alt F12 menu, the debug/cheat menu, you can click this little button here that says Biomes Visible on Map. It's exactly the same as the map that I used, except it's in the game, and that would have been way more effective. So yeah, here you can see this is all Twin Craters. No canyons there. The canyons are only over here and up here. So that's that. It's a little bit of a waste there, and that's why we named them the way that we did. Because one was intentional for that biome, and the other was a complete accident. So that's that. So I think that is all of them except for the one we are currently at, which is Brent's Dent, in honor of Brent Geary and your continuing support and, you know, massive contributions in terms of mod advice and just general game advice. In tying in with that, the mod advice, we have installed a few new visual mods. One of them is Cool Rockets, which changes the exhaust on these rockets. I'll go ahead and show you that right now, because the next thing we're going to do, at least somewhat, we're going to be bringing these into orbit around the moon. That's the next step, although 2 of them are extremely low on fuel, so we're going to have to bring a refueler over to the moon before we even launch them, because, well, we'll get to that. So this is what the new cool rockets look like, or not cool rockets, but hot rockets look like, at least on these Terrier engines. Very nice. Let's go ahead and get this thing pointed east so we can be pointed towards a good orbit. And yeah, this one I'm not worried about running out of fuel, it's got plenty. And by the time we get the refueler over here to all of the ships, there will be enough for a return trip on all of them, but that's already way too high of an apoapsis, guaranteed. Yeah, that could be better, but yeah, so that's what the new exhaust system looks like. In addition to that, you might have noticed that there was light coming from those. That's because we also installed engine lighting, which looks just amazing. It does create kind of a weird little glitch where when you switch to a new ship, the first frame when you switch over to it, it's all lit up like your engine is engaged, but that's not the case. It's just a glitch, and it goes away after that frame and everything loads in. In addition to those, we also have rover wheel sounds. That's not so much visual as aural, I guess. I hate that word, aural. It means sound related, where you get words like audio and things like that, but it sounds too much like another similar word. But anyway, I had also originally put in collision effects, which is a mod that changes, like when you're sliding along the ground or when things bash into each other, you get particle effects where things, fly off or sparks come up, and it looks really nice and it adds some sound effects to that process, but I took it off because I thought it was causing a problem, a glitch in the game. Turns out I was wrong about that. It wasn't causing any problems and that glitch is still present, so I may end up going back and putting it back in. But that glitch that I'm talking about is when I'm on an EVA with a Kerbal and they are going up to, interact with the ship in some way, whether that is to, climb back in or climb out and climb down, anything like that. Basically, something weird happens with the gravity system and it acts like the gravity is higher than it is. I don't know if it's like Kerbin gravity or what, but suddenly the Kerbal will just shoot down straight towards the ground. And, it's not at a speed that kills them or anything, but it is sort of annoying when you're trying to grab onto the ship and suddenly the Kerbal just flies straight to the ground. It's not very useful, so... Alright, we've got this guy back into orbit. Now I'm going to go and get the rest of these equatorial ones into orbit, but two of them, I think it's these two, Emo's Depression and the pockmarker DH, I believe. Those ones are significantly low on fuel. I think those are the ones that had sort of rough landings. But yeah, they're too low on fuel to even really get a stable orbit of any kind. And after a lot of attempts, I've found that I can get them into one orbit, but if I were to do that before bringing the refueling mission over, which is going to be the min-masteroider, not the lander, I don't know where that thing is. Oh, that's in orbit around Kerbin. Anyway, yeah, if I were to get those into orbit before bringing the refueling mission over, in the time it would take to bring the refueler over, the moon would spin because they'd be in a highly inclined orbit, to the point where their orbits would then interact with some high peak, and we lose those ships. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to get the equatorial ones into orbit, go over and get the refueler and bring it to the moon, and then we'll worry about those two. So with that in mind, let's just get to it, shall we? Alright, so now that the refueler has arrived, it's time to go bring those slightly more precarious ships into orbit. Where's the moon? There it is. Forgot it was way above me. Anyway, let me get down there and go ahead and do that. And it's a little bit of a process. I may have to take multiple attempts at it, but hopefully that won't be the case. I've sort of done this enough times that maybe I'll be able to handle it no problem. We'll see. We'll go ahead and get to it. Alright, so I've got one of those ships up into orbit, and I've learned something over the course of a number of attempts. I've learned a couple of things. Number one, don't trust the map screen, because if you're in an extremely low orbit around something that doesn't have atmosphere like the moon, even if you see that your orbit is entirely clear of obstacles, doesn't clip into the planet at all, it might not necessarily be true. So, pay attention to that. I had one orbit that was like roughly 5 kilometers the whole way around, and I, watched the ship make the orbit, and on the map screen it looked fine. It looked like it was coming in just above a peak, but on the actual ship screen, we careened straight into that peak, We were probably like 20, 30 meters short. So yeah, map screen not to be entirely trusted. The other thing is that while I thought it was the inclination of the ships causing problems with the moon, rotating its higher peaks into their orbits, it's also just a limitation of the game. The time warp system, if your ship is in extremely low orbit, doesn't really know how to handle them and their positions in relation to the surface of the planet or planetoid in question. So even if you have a clear orbit that comes like really insanely close to the ground, if you time warp on a different object, like you're not focused on the one that is in that low orbit, that object will cease to exist. So it basically tells the game that the thing crashed into something that wasn't actually in its path. It has a weird sensitivity to it. I actually had a number of ships on the equatorial orbit also have that problem, because they were in, roughly 5-kilometer orbits, and that's completely clear of obstacles, but according to the game, if you're in time warp on something else, that's too close. And yeah, we lost ships that way, so I went back and fixed it all, and I've learned a lot of lessons. So that's just a taste of what I've been through in the process of trying to get this mission done. So now, that one is in orbit, it's absolutely clear of obstacles, but we need to bring the refueler down to it, and crap, it's not the one. The other ship, when we get it into orbit, it'll be a lot closer to the inclination of this refueler. It's like a 45-degree change as opposed to this more than 90-degree change that we have to make, but well, that's what we did first, and we absolutely can't do this with both of them in orbit because we have to time warp. Well, we don't have to time warp, but I don't feel like, sitting here and leaving myself an alarm for like 2 hours later while this thing gets down to the moon. So, yeah, we can only do this with one object in orbit at a time, and while this thing, let's go ahead and set up our target system and our maneuver that we have to make. Let's see, it's this ship right here, set as target. So that node is, 95 degrees. Not pleasant. So I believe we are coming around this way, which means we want the orbit, or the maneuver to be made right here. And I'll go ahead and get that set up real quick. Okay, so the maneuver is set up. We're going to have to make a secondary maneuver later on, which sort of blows. I'm going to quick save right now because I managed to get this ship into not a terrible orbit. It's actually close to 8 kilometers all the way around. That still comes close to a couple of peaks. I'm going to try time warping without switching, and if the thing is still there when we get to our maneuver, then we'll just proceed from there. But there's a good chance that it's going to just stop existing. So if that's the case, we'll go back to the quick load. I just quick saved, so let's just see how this works. Alright, it's still there. Excellent. That makes me very happy. So, it entirely through just perseverance, I managed to get that orbit up to where it is, because with any wrong move, that orbit would be, well, non-existent. It would actually be suborbital. I had to just repeatedly go, burn only at apoapsis and periapsis and get the angle just right on takeoff. And, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. Not pleasant. Not pleasant at all. I ended up going around the moon multiple times, just pushing out the periapsis and apoapsis over and over again with, like, half a second of, 1/20th thrust. Just to conserve as much fuel as possible while getting the most out of it, and it worked out. Just barely. Should have been burning sooner than that. Got distracted with my talking. But that's okay, we're gonna have to make a secondary burn anyway. It'll just be slightly different than what we thought. But okay, there's that. We'll make another one here at the next descending node. just to get our inclination exactly right, and we'll also, at that point, bring down the periapsis and get our intersect, and I'll meet up with you once we get the rendezvous. Sound good? All right. All right, we are all grappled up, and it's time to get this thing some fuel, but, what was I going to say before I did all that? Oh, yeah, this refueler is kind of tough to work with because I very foolishly, during the building of the thing, didn't give it a battery. So it only can hold 10 electrical charge at a time in this little probe core here, which is hidden under the docking port. But it's pretty much all we have to work with because the, moon station? Moon base? I don't remember what it's called. The Moon Beast, that's right, the Moon Beast station is, it's up there, but it doesn't have a claw. It only has a tiny little docking port, and these guys don't have that. And also, it doesn't have very much fuel anyway, so this thing is definitely the ideal candidate, but let's go ahead and transfer this fuel over to here. Not all of it, just enough so that it can correct its inclination, rendezvous with the other ships, and then we'll take the refueler down to the other ship that still needs fuel. Clearly we'll have to get that thing up into its own orbit before we can worry about it, but, wow, actually, pretty sure that's the one. Yeah, we're like right on it. That's beautiful. Oh, that's really nice. That's gonna take nothing to fix. Okay, well, I'm definitely pleased about that. Let's get this fuel transferred, and I will see you once I've got that thing in orbit, and potentially after I've rendezvoused with it. Alright, so we are all refueled, and it's time to continue with the process of acting like we're going to do this thing with all of the ships burning simultaneously, which we're not, but I can at least show you, what the original plan was, and that involves now bringing all of the ships together. So we're going to be rendezvousing all 7, and I'm also going to bring the refueler, so that makes 8. But yeah, they're all going to be together on the equatorial orbit. So let me go ahead and spend, an hour or so doing that. Probably won't take quite that long, but you never know. There could be hazards or disasters or whatever. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get to that, shall we? Alright, well, that is about close enough for our purposes here. Now, with the original plan, I would have had them a little bit closer to each other, basically like right up on top of each other, or one another rather. But, yeah, the plan would have been, had I not encountered so many difficulties and realized all the limitations that are at hand, to start with the very back ship and start its burn towards Kerbin, towards a moon escape and then a Kerbin capture. And while it was burning, I would have then switched to the next ship as I passed it and started its burn at the same time, and so on and so forth until all of them were burning for the escape. And I would have had to switch back and forth and shut them off at the right times and do all that stuff. But I found out way after the fact, or after finally getting to this point in a previous attempt, that you can't burn simultaneously with ships. I did not realize that before giving myself this challenge. So that's game limitation number 1. You cannot have multiple objects under, thrust at the same time. You can't throttle them up and then switch to another ship. At least not without mods. I'm sure there are mods that allow that sort of thing, but in the stock game, that is out of the question. So that was the first thing, and the second thing is the problem of having to get them to Kerbin within 2.2 kilometers of one another. like all of them within a 2.2 kilometer cluster, because I didn't realize that not only can you not quick change between ships under 2.2 kilometers or above 2.2 kilometers, when you're in atmosphere, the objects that are more than that distance away stop existing. They basically just count as crashed. And so that's another major problem I did not realize would be part of the, difficulty here, because I figured even if they were, too far apart for the quick change, I could at least go to the map screen, change over to them fast enough, and, hit their parachutes if necessary or whatever. But, that doesn't work at all. And that there aren't mods to handle. The closest thing that I could find is there are mods that allow you to just automatically recover vessels that get too far away. Instead of crashing them and deleting them, it deletes them and turns them into, recovered funds and science and all that stuff. But, that doesn't sound appealing to me at all. So, from here, instead of going through with all of that stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and bring the Min-Masteroider up to all of those, refuel them as necessary, redistribute the fuel, because some of them have too much, some of them don't have enough, and I've got plenty to spare. Each of them needs, I believe, roughly 35 to 40 units of the liquid fuel in order to get back to Kerbin. At least that was on a previous attempt from a lower lower orbit. And so, it might not be quite so much, but that's the basic idea. I'm going to redistribute the fuel, and I'm just going to bring them back to Kerbin one by one, unfortunately. A little bit of a letdown, I know, and it's not just game limitations. Even with the stock game, it would be possible to do it. It would just be insanely difficult. It's way, way beyond my capability. You'd have to plan out your orbits so that, they were spaced to the point where you'd be starting your burn, like, with the back ship, I don't know, a minute behind, or maybe you'd have to do it from the front ship, and, I don't know, they'd be staggered, and they'd all come in on different parabolic arcs, and you'd have to turn it into an actual math problem and calculate out the solutions. And I get the feeling that would involve actual calculus at this point, because there would be like min-maxing and finding local minimums and maximums, and I have no idea. I would not want to mess around with trying to set up that equation, let alone solve it. So, I'm just going to get on with things and bring them back to Kerbin. I'll see you on the ground. the final ship has touched down. The Lunar madness is over. I know I said I might return them to the Kerbal Space Center, but even that has proven to be sort of outside of my ability. And to be completely honest, I grew very frustrated over the course of this mission. I mean, as you know, there was just an extreme delay between the previous episode and this one, and more than that, there's actually been 2 weeks between me starting this episode and finishing it, because I kept on thinking of different approaches and, you know, going back to the old save file that I had backed up to try different ways to actually, you know, bring all of these ships back simultaneously. I kept on trying to do that even after starting the, you know, mission where I give up and just bring them back one by one as we have. And yeah, on the very last one that I tried, it seemed kind of promising. Basically, I brought all of the ships out to the absolute edge of the moon's gravitational field. So they were orbiting at, I think it was like 200 some odd kilometers from the moon. I don't know the exact distance, but yeah, they were so far from it that to make one orbit, the moon was going like a quarter of the way around Kerbin. And I kept running into brick walls every time I would try, and that approach would have probably worked if I had just a little bit more control over things. Because when you have such a huge orbit like that, even if you bring the ships within, like, you know, right into contact with each other, like they're docking together, you can never get them in the exact same orbit. So even the slightest amount off, and in the time it takes you to bring another ship up to them to try and rendezvous all of them, they drift far, far apart, and you can't get them back together, because as you try to do that with the next ship, the ones that are together drift back apart, and it's just this never-ending clusterfuck. And it would be possible to do it if I had, like, I don't know, 5 more decimal points on the velocity meter, and the ability to manually enter thrust control, thrust limits, because I know you can limit the amount of thrust coming out of an engine, but it's another bar slider. You don't have a way to just enter digits, and if you could do that manually, and also be able to see your velocity down to a few more thousandths or millionths, I don't know, some ridiculously small decimal, then it would be possible to have a close enough measure of deviation from your orbits to be able to actually keep them together. So I had to give up even on that one, and now here we are. All 7 ships landed. These two are actually pretty damn close together. 27 kilometers apart, I think it said. Yeah, 27.3. So, with all of that said and done, let's finish this. Let's recover this vessel. 562 science from that single craft. And we're going to have similar amounts from 5 more of them. And one that will just be sort of a waste. But we shall see. So let's just head into this tracking center and just bring all 6 of them back. I'll just fast forward through the rest of this for you. Okay, and that's that. And it turns out even the one that, you know, didn't give us the full amount still gave us like 60 some odd science, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, 3,741.3 science points to spend. And still over 1 million in funds. We're in great shape. Excellent. So, we're going to be spending all of this science in the next episode, and it's time to get back on track with regular releases and no more ridiculous, insane challenges for myself. I mean, I'll still give myself challenges, but I really don't like having this ridiculous, you know, month-long wait between episodes. I don't like doing that to you guys. I really wanted to try and do what I had promised. I wanted to live up to my word, you know? I said I was going to return them simultaneously, and I really, it bugs the crap out of me that I was just completely unable to do that. So, yeah, I'm going to be a little more careful in the things that I promise are coming. And, Yeah, like I said, I don't like having that massive wait between episodes. I don't like doing that to you. I don't like doing it to me. And, yeah, so I'm not going to do that again. So, again, I am so sorry for the massive letdown, but it's over. It's all over. Let's get back to our missions as usual and do some more interesting things on other planets. Not so much in the moon and Kerbin system. And anyway, that's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm Infinite Spiral. This is Kerbal Space Program. If you enjoyed what you saw here, feel free to leave a like. If you'd like to keep seeing more, feel free to subscribe. There won't be any crazy month-long waits anymore. And, yeah, you'll get regular videos, I promise. All right, well, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.